One of my stories was a show I did at Small's Paradise in Harlem. And Small's Paradise was one of the clubs that, I don't know if it's still there, but for years and years and years was a staple for jazz musicians in Harlem. And I did quite a few gigs there, and then I went to a place called the Baby Grand. It was a piano right on 125th Street, right next to the Apollo Theater. And Harlem was like, to me, it was like a great experience, It was like, you could buy anything there, you could find anything there, you could hear anything there, you could eat anything there. The food was wonderful, and the apartment that I was living in was like pretty luxurious. I mean, so I had nothing, I wanted for nothing while I was there. The only thing was that I had to get out of town because those jobs were killing me. Riding the Greyhound bus out to Little Ferry, New Jersey was not my cup of tea. But anyway, I hightailed it back to Boston and started working on very, very classy gigs. I mean, all of a sudden things turned for me for the better. And I was working in chic hotel rooms where they did supper shows, and people stayed in those hotels. Like, that's where I met Dizzy Gillespie, where he taught me how to play chess, and Errol Garner was there, and he taught me how to use my right hand in order to play tenths, and his hands were smaller than mine, by the way. I mean, the man played the most incredible piano, but his hands were smaller than my hands. And I don't know how he did it, but he played mostly tenths with both hands. So he taught me the right hand, the left hand still doesn't make it. But anyway, I met so many wonderful musicians there. And one of the shows that I did yearly was a show for the NAACP. And that particular year, I think it was like 54, this song had come out. It was a big hit for Julie London, and I sang it at the NAACP show at Hancock Hall, which was a huge auditorium, and got a standing ovation. That was my first, so I'll never forget that. You say you're lonely, you cry the long night through. Well, you can cry me a river, I cry a river over you. Now you say you're sorry for being so untrue. Well, you can cry me a river, I cry a river over you. Boston went well. I worked there, you know, like probably 6 months or so. Got a call from an agent in Miami. Great gig, you gotta come down right away. I'd never been south before. And it was kind of like, you know, early. It was before the, you know, the marches, but it was early in the civil rights era, and I was a little apprehensive. But anyway, I said, okay, come on, buck up, go south. So I went to Miami, and this job was supposed to be for someone who sang the blues. Now, guys, is that me? That wasn't me. The club was on a causeway in Miami. It was a big old gaudy place. And it was a big show. They had a fellow who met me, nice fellow. His name was Lord Flea. He was a calypso singer, and he was one of the headliners at the show. And one of the other headliners was Bahama Mama, and she was kind of like a contortionist, exotic dancer. It was a great show. Betty, that's who you are. Right, it just struck me who you are. Okay. Anyway, thank you for coming. I'm so glad to see you. Anyway, so I I went to this club, I sang the best I could. The guy said to me at the end of my set, he says, "You're not what I expected." And I said, "This is not what I expected." So we shook hands, and he paid me for the whole night. I only did one set, that's how bad it was. Anyway, but Lord Flea said to me, "Don't worry about it. Tomorrow you're going to have a good time. You're going to find something in Miami. Tomorrow morning I'm going to take you to see a big band that's coming to town." I said, "What band?" He said, "Count Basie." I said, "Oh my God." All my friends. Okay, so the next morning, it was a Sunday. It was an outdoor concert. Went, saw Count Basie. Not only did I see Count Basie, but who was there but a fellow named Jimmy Tyler, who was a band leader from Boston, who said, "Crystal, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm stranded. I have a terrible hotel room and not much money and no job." He says, "Don't worry about it. I've got the perfect job for you." He was working at the black hotel in town, the best black hotel in town, where all the big acts came and performed and stayed. And he said, "They need an intermission pianist." I got that job, and I stayed there, and I worked with just about everybody. I worked with Billy Daniels, I worked with Roy Hamilton, Al Hibbler, Ruth Brown, Slappy White, Red Fox. I mean, I worked with everybody in that room. And everybody who didn't stay on the beach, who was in town to work, stayed at the hotel. Sammy Davis Jr. was there. You know, he was a great person. He played his music all day long. If you liked it, great. If you didn't, you're out of luck. He plastered it for the whole pool. Anyway, I stayed there at that hotel. I had a beautiful room overlooking the pool. It was a great time. And then the season ended. The season ended, and not only did the season end, but it was really almost time for me to go back to Boston, because I had a brother I had never met who grew up in the West Indies, and we grew up here in the States, and he finally was coming to the States. And so there was going to be a big family reunion, and I could not wait to get back home. Some of my customers in some of these clubs I worked in that weren't in the Calvert, the hotel was the Lord Calvert Hotel. And after the season ended, before I went back to Boston, I worked all around on all different causeways. The clientele there was mostly from New York City. It was a New York City crowd. They said, "You have to go to New York City. That's where you belong." I said, "I was already there." And I worked in New Jersey and the Bronx. They said, "No, you need to go to New York." I said, "Okay, well, when the right thing comes, I'll go." And they said one of the songs that everybody sang, which I'll do for you now, which was really hot in New York at the time, was this one. Let me see. This is a real kind of a New York cabaret song. Let me love you. Let me say that I do. If you lend me your ear, I'll make it clear the way that I do. Let me whisper it, let me sigh it, let me sing it to you, or I may cry it. Let me love you. Let me show that I do. Let me do a million impossible things so you know that I do. I'll buy you the dawn if you let me love you today. And tomorrow I'll send you merrily on your way. Anyway, I got myself somehow back to New York City. What time are we? Where am I? Am I in New York? I wish I was. Eastern Standard Time. Anyway, somehow my friend John Malachi was playing at the Apollo Theater with Al Hibbler. I was working in New York City at the Toast. The Toast was a club that was surrounded by the living room, the tender track, Basin Street East. There were clubs all around. Everybody was working in that town. Mabel Mercer was there, Bobby Short was there, Blossom Deary was there. I mean, all the, and Matt Dennis, anybody who sang and played piano was working within, let's see, 3 blocks of where I was working. So we were all visiting back and forth. But anyway, it was a fabulous place to be. And I heard that Al Hibbler was at the Apollo Theater. I had to go and see John. He took me to a jam session that night, and who was at the jam session but Thelonious Monk? And yes, I met Thelonious Monk, and he was very good. He was very good to me. He was a very good friend to me, and he invited me to his apartment, as a matter of fact. Yep. Sure. And well, I was introduced to him as a, you know, an upcoming pianist, songwriter, and I played this one. Well, I had a bunch of tunes that went kind of like that. Anyway, so I was anxious to play them for everybody, and he said, okay, come play them for me. I went to his apartment, and met his wife was there, Nellie. He had 2 lovely little kids. Thelonious Jr. and Barbara. They were toddlers. As a matter of fact, they were napping. Thelonious was practicing for a recording session that night, and he kept playing one tune over and over again, a new one. I hadn't heard it. It was really nice. I enjoyed it very much. After a while, he got up from the piano, motioned for me to sit down and play. I sat down, I played my and he liked to listen to music and dance, so he was dancing around the kitchen. It was like a bar or something, and the kitchen was there, and the piano, was up against the wall, and there was a hallway. That was weird. But New York apartments are strange. Anyway, so he was dancing around in his little space, and Nellie had left for a while to go shopping, came back, and she said, why don't you come with us tonight to the recording session? Yes, love it. I went to his recording session. That song that he was practicing was called Crepuscule with Nellie, before Nellie. Anyway, I think it's with. And I'm not going to play it for you now, I can't play that song. But this one I will play in honor of Thelonious Monk. Willow, weep for me. Willow, weep for me. Spread your branches down along the ground and cover me. Listen to my plea. Bend low, willow, and weep for me. My tears out in the stream, sad as I can be. Bend, oh willow, and weep for me. Whisper to the wind and say that love has sinned to leave my heart a-breaking and make him moan. And then I did a lot of shows while I was out there. One show I did that is memorable was Georgie Jessel. I didn't even know he was still alive. He must have been in his 90s then. But anyway, I was scheduled to do his show. I mean, I did a lot of strange shows. Jerry Lester show. I mean, I remember when we first got on television, the Jerry Lester show was on with right after wrestling or something like that. Yeah. And with Dagmar, right? Dagmar. And Dagmar was still with him. She was still with him. She was there, yeah, right? And she looked the same. She hadn't changed a bit. She looked fabulous, though. Anyway, So, but the Georgie Jessel show, I figured, what have I got to lose? He probably won't remember anyway. So I did a song that he was famous for, and a little differently than he would do it, and I'll just do it now. One bright and